Have you ever looked at the specs and features of a product and you think it's gonna be way too expensive? Then you actually look up the price and it turns out to be surprisingly affordable? Accsoon's Cineview Master 4K was one product I did not expect to be priced under $1,000, because this does two things which are completely beyond expectations in this price range. It transmits in 4K up to 60p, and it does so with a super low latency of 35 milliseconds. That latency further improves to an insanely low 25 milliseconds for Full HD, and as if that wasn't enough to outperform its price point, this also offers all the features you would typically use their CMO products for, except because of 4K 60p and wireless connectivity, this outperforms even the best CMO currently on offer. So let's unpack this remarkable piece of gear, starting with the hardware. If you look at this from the side, it's giving Cybertruck vibes, but that aside, this system does do both HDMI and 3G SDI. On the transmitter, there is a loop out for the HDMI input, as well as one USB-C port for an additional output to an iPhone or iPad. On the receiver, it's one output for HDMI and one more for SDI. It is possible to tap a signal from both outputs at the same time. The status monitor on both ends is a full-color LCD display, along with a clickable rotary encoder for dialing any settings in. You can power these either with NP batteries or a DC power supply. When it comes to actually using a set of wireless video transmitters, the end goal really doesn't get any more straightforward. Video goes in one end, comes out the other. A good system simply achieves this goal without giving the user too much trouble. For the case of the Cineview Master 4K, it does succeed in delivering a robust signal thanks to its tri-band operation, so simultaneously it's transmitting video over 2.4 GHz, 5 GHz, as well as 6 GHz radio frequency bands. What this means is if there's a dropout or interference in one or two of these bands, it's still got the remaining bands to fall back to. That explains the total of 6 antennas you get on these units. It's the 2.4 and 5 GHz antennas up top, and the shorter ones on the sides are the 6 GHz antennas. Accsoon has also taken the approach of putting a video processor in here that's basically overqualified. They claim it's actually powerful enough to process 8K video, so when we run this at 4K, we'll likely never hit any bottlenecks when it comes to processing power. The transmitter is actually always encoding two wireless streams which are being sent out simultaneously, one stream in 4K and one more in 1080p. You can then select on the receiver which one of these streams to prioritize. If you wish to customize the bitrate of the transmission, you can do so back on the transmitter in 12 increments. So how good is the range on this? For our line-of-sight range test, we've got the transmitter here beaming a 4K signal from this camera to this receiver, which I'll be taking with me down the length of this road, and we'll see how far down I can make it while still maintaining a solid signal. Of course, I didn't actually walk all the way down. I drove all the way to the end of this road, which is about 700 meters away. Because the receiver was in my car and hence breaking line of sight, it did begin to drop out once I was about 200 meters out, but when I reached the end of the road and brought the receiver back into line of sight, here's what I was looking at. I've made it all the way to the very end of this road, and I'm still getting a signal with line of sight. So I've officially ran out of road to do this test. I'm trying to find myself in the frame, but I'm so far away I don't think I can even make myself out. Pretty respectable quality as well. I am also recording the output from the receiver on my Atomos Ninja 5, so I'll put that up on the screen and have you see that 4K that I'm receiving almost 800 meters away. Really, really impressive stuff. Now, of course, not every scenario I use this in will allow me to have the receiver within line of sight of the transmitter, which is why I've also taken this for a spin in my studio, involving a few more walls and ceilings. I left the transmitter in place while I headed downstairs with the receiver. I even proceeded to head straight out my yard, and I was genuinely quite impressed that I wasn't getting more dropouts. This is beaming through quite a few walls and an entire ceiling. If you use one of these mobile devices as a receiver though, do expect less range from it, primarily because the antennas in our phones look a little less exciting compared to the ones on this dedicated receiver. That being said, it's not a bad range either. For most production environments where the person watching the wireless feed is going to be within the general vicinity of the transmitter, monitoring via the Accsoon C app is actually more than a viable option. In fact, the wireless monitoring experience from the mobile app is absolutely comparable to that of a field monitor hooked up to a receiver, because in terms of latency, this is not any slower. The ultra-low latency of this system applies even when wirelessly monitoring with just your iPhone or iPad. To paint a picture when we're dealing with latencies of 25 to 35 milliseconds, the bigger contributor to latency would often be from the camera or the monitor itself. For example, connecting my Alpha 7S III to an Atomos Ninja 5 directly via HDMI cable already has a latency of around 80 to 100 milliseconds. So when it comes to use cases like focus pulling, the low latency of this system is certainly very attractive. I also like that you can wirelessly connect up to 4 receivers to one transmitter, and among these 4 receivers, you can mix and match these dedicated RX units or any Android phone, iPhone, or iPad running the Accsoon C app. My favorite is definitely the iPad because it's one single thing you hold with a big screen to monitor from. You get that 4K 60 FPS video signal and you don't have to bother with additional NP batteries or running cables from the receiver to the monitor. It's just one single slab in your hand. And because I'm shooting in S-Log, I can apply a LUT right here in the app, as well as have the option to bake the LUT in to my local recording. So if I go ahead and hit record here, this is also the full 4K 60p preview, which I can record directly onto my device. This is along with all the monitoring assists and overlays like waveforms, false color, de-squeeze, and transparent image overlays. Basically, the Accsoon CMO, but wireless. The CMO 4K maxes out at 30 FPS. This is even more powerful at 60 FPS and has an SDI input like the CMO Pro. It's also possible to connect one more iPhone or iPad running Accsoon C to the transmitter's USB port. This is in addition to the 4 wirelessly connected clients. This wired connection method is perhaps the most useful for a camera to cloud workflow, since this is also integrated with Frame.io. It could of course also be used for live streaming, but even just the local recordings alone would be amazing for getting content from the camera straight to social media incredibly quickly. One final merit I'd like to point out about the system is the fact that you actually have the option to turn the fan off for completely silent operation. This is available on both transmitter and receiver. Obviously, I recommend leaving it off for only as long as you need that clean audio, but there is a temperature display for you to keep an eye on heat, and I just felt this is a really thoughtful option to have. In fact, there are so many things on this which are genuinely useful features in addition to its primary duty of transmitting video in 4K 60p. This system from Accsoon is definitely, in my opinion, one that punches way beyond its price point. So this has been the Cineview Master 4K. I'll leave links below for anyone interested, and I'll be seeing you around.